All right, everyone, here we are, back in the steam zone. Ben, what you been up to this week?
I've been at some Climate Week events in New York. I've been watching the UN go on in my city. So it's an exciting, busy week in New York. What about you, Noah?
It has been. I think they busted a ring of like ships that were trying to take down I don't know. I couldn't follow that story. Maybe we'll talk about that later. The UN's been some drama. I know President Trump was stuck on an elevator or escalator. There's a lot of drama coming out of the UN this week, Ben. I've not been in town. I was down in Florida. I am currently in steamy DC. If you're watching this, we got a little Defense Game Day, our live show coming up here in a bit. It'll have aired by the time this hits. So shout out to our friends at Station DC opening a new space for technology folks in DC to gather. So there's a lot steaming this week, but the news hasn't been too shabby either, Ben. I think we got some good topics to talk about this week. And since you've been hanging out at the UN and watching all those climate folks, the conversation that caught my eye was there was one world leader on stage that was particularly surprising. Did you see the news about Syria's new president and who interviewed him?
Yeah, good old David Petraeus sitting down with the new president of Syria. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm call me a boomer on this one, but I was excited by this, right? President, I think he goes by al-Sharaa now, formerly al-Jalani when he was the head of HTS. I think he might have had a different nom de guerre when he was an Al-Qaeda affiliate. Sitting down with his former, you could call him his former captor, but General Petraeus hunted this guy, imprisoned this guy for I think up to 6 months when he was a member of Al Qaeda, right? And the two of them had this like very civil conversation at the UN this week that was all over the internet. I thought that was awesome, right? And this is, I think, we don't know how the future is going to play out, but what you clearly have here is a guy who was a revolutionary. He was trying to change the status quo in Syria. Didn't like Bashar al-Assad. He didn't really know how to go about that. He tried a couple of different vectors. He becomes president, and now as president, he's I just want to be like in the club. I want to be a country. I want a seat at the table. Yes, General Petraeus, you hunted me, but yeah, I was Al Qaeda. It was understandable. You were doing your job. I was doing mine. Shake hands and we move on. So I'm not saying this guy is a good guy now. I don't know how he's going to turn out as a leader. Maybe we're going to have to hunt him again someday. Hopefully not. But to see this kind of reconciliation, man, it gives me a little bit of hope. What about you?
Yeah, you don't make cliche but true. You don't make peace with your friends. We talked about who can you sit down with and talk to. If these two can sit down and talk, then you can get coffee with someone, your buddy, your family member you stop talking to over politics, right? Everyone in America, and I'll critique both sides on the left, on the right, everybody is so sensitive, can't have a conversation. Your words are violence, and we've got the guy hunting another guy, and they're sitting down totally civilly. People can change and evolve. And even if they haven't changed and evolved, they can just still sit down and have a useful conversation. So I think this is behavior we should all model, with behavior we should all try to aim to get, because it's just, we'll be in a better world if these kind of conversations happen at our local level, at our state level, at our federal level, and at the international level.
Take that Twitter sphere or exosphere. Go grab a coffee with the person you just called a blah, 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 blah on the internet. It could be okay. You might make a friend. We're getting back to Ginsburg Scalia. Ben, that's what we're doing here. These guys, they go to the theater on Friday. They go to the opera. That's what we're doing here. We'll see what plays out in Syria, but cool moment
Yeah.
nonetheless.
And I think that actually pivots nicely into our next topic, right? Which
What do you got
is
for us?
Bradley Tusk, who was influential, one of the leaders at Uber who helped make them survive their early regulatory troubles. And we should do a deep dive one day on that because it's really interesting on the Steam Zone. But today he's published, or not today, but this week, he's published an article titled The Problem with Declaring Things Good or Bad. And I think it's a really great article, and everybody should read it. But there's one quote that stands out to me, which is regulation is not inherently good or bad. Venture capital is not inherently good or bad. Government is not inherently good or bad. Startups aren't inherently good or bad, right? These are all just systems and tools that we use. Some are good, some are bad. And I think that really, I think hits home with me. It's something I've talked a lot about on this show, which is the details matter, right? We cannot just do the Twitter thing that we all do, which is read the headline and be like good or bad and be done with it. The details really matter. I don't know if you have any reaction to the article, but I really loved it.
Ben, we are paid to have a reaction to the article, my friend, and by paid I mean we get good vibes from it. Yeah, look, here's I'm a fan of Bradley's work. I respect the take, especially on these topics. I don't want to take this too far, right? I think and you're not claiming this, where I get off the bus is I don't necessarily subscribe to moral relativism. I don't think we should blow this up to be like, there is no such thing as good and bad in the universe. I don't believe that. I actually do believe that good and evil exist. I think we actually need to call out things as evil. Now, there's this trend right now, if you don't agree with something, the person who, brought it forth as a demon or whatever, that's not for me either. But there are things that we as humanity, we as living things can reject. Say, hey, this is not actually something that we want. Things like child rape. Like I get off the bus there, Ben. You're not going to convince me that there's a circumstance in which that makes sense. I understand murder is a little bit different. There are some circumstances where killing is justified if you're protecting your family or your nation or people close to you. Like there are reasons why I understand the contours of the argument. You've made this argument here on the Steam Zone many a time. The devil's in the details. It's all about execution. I think this is key. Right now, what comes to mind for me is AI, which is there's people who are saying, hey, we just need more, faster all the time. And I understand why we are in this kind of competitive environment where there's this belief, hey, we just need to do whatever we can to advance the state of play as quickly as possible. Call that the accelerationist camp. I think there's really good arguments for it. The flip side of that is it doesn't mean the effects are going to be unequivocally positive. And I think that's a part of what Bradley's saying here is it's incumbent. Yes, the people building it need to be cognizant of that. And AI, maybe more than any other technology, is at least catalyzing folks to start thinking about the downstream effects of what the widespread adoption of this technology may entail. I'm not so sure we have a handle on any of it, but the people seem to be aware. There are some fellowships now that we're seeing. We talked to Charles last week with the industrial fellowship, trying to get some folks who are a little bit closer to this technology into policy communities to start thinking about the implications of all of this. It's a work in progress. I don't think we've ever done that super well, even in our open democratic society here in the United States. But if the point is, hey, it's a tool and tools can be good or tools can be used for bad, then let's all do what we can to make sure it's on the side of the good team. And that's part of the accelerationist argument, frankly, which is that, hey, I'd rather America be the dominant force in some of these technologies than, say, I don't know, China.
Okay, next week on the Steam Zone, we're going to dive into Western philosophy and understand Spinoza and Nietzsche. What is good? What is bad? Is good what is useful to us and evil the contrary, like Spinoza would say? Or we got the Friedrich Nietzsche view. I'm just kidding. Maybe I'm not. We'll see what the.
I don't know. I kind of like that. If you want to join a Steam Zone little philosophy Eaton talk, maybe we'll set that up in the city, man. That sounds like a good time.
Curriculum at U Chicago coming back to play. It's a good thing we still teach Western thought.
We can, and moral philosophy of politics. Let's do it.
Okay. Getting into something that is good or bad, and we'll make a call here now. Y Combinator. Did you know, I know back in the day, you probably applied early decision at college and were really excited. Now you can do that to Y Combinator. So you don't have to take any risk. Don't have to drop out of school. You just apply to Y Combinator and boom, you get in, you finish your classes, have fun with your friends, go to senior year, stay drinking, stay having fun, and then you can start your company. Any thoughts on the Y Combinator early decision?
Yeah, man, I am conflicted on this one, Ben, because I'll be honest, I think we've talked about this. I started a company in college with some friends, and people really thought it was really stupid at the time. I won't go into the details of what it is. Maybe we'll do an after action review on a future Steam Zone. But there was not a lot of support at the time for what we were doing. And I think had there been the option to say, oh, you could just focus on school, focus on relationships, friends, and all that kind of stuff, and then you'll have this kind of set program afterwards, I think that probably would have been pretty compelling. On the flip side, the question is YC killing YC? Are they murdering the secret sauce that produces exceptional founders who go after really big problems, hard targets with a little bit of reckless abandon and youthful naivete in a way that combines to build something incredible, something beautiful? And I think like the way I see this, honestly, Ben, is through the lens of more assets under management. And that is that Y Combinator is just getting really big. And the more money that they have to manage and they have to put to work, this is another way that they are just growing the empire. It's like we talked about their call for startups in the defense and the hard tech space earlier this year. Great. We're excited they're focused on the domain. This I see as, hey, look, we just need to see a certain volume of founders every single year to make sure that we get the one or two or the two or three that are going to turn into something really huge. And the reality is they don't really care what happens to the other 99% of folks that come through the program. So I look at this as, I think it's Y Combinator, or a blue chip brand. I don't know. I don't think this is going to harm the prestige long term. You'll probably see on Hacker News, I am sure the boards are lighting up and people have takes and folks are upset or think they're opening the gates too big. That happens anytime you blow the gates of a small group or a little society wide open. My take is I don't know that you'll see the next Airbnb come from someone who applied early decision, but I don't think it fundamentally kills the program. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know if the program itself is a problem. I think it's more symptomatic of a larger problem where I think we have mistaken in this kind of startup and larger defense tech, industrial renaissance, reindustrialized thing, correlation and causation, right? I think if you have a great idea, you're going to drop out and go pursue it. But that doesn't mean that to have a great idea, you need to drop out and pursue it. And there are a lot of great companies that have been started by people who took risks and done stuff. And so we've fetishized starting a company as one of the only ways to go do great things, but it's not. And so I worry that instead of pushing people into really productive areas, we'll talk later about when we've talked about issues we have in manufacturing, issues we have in doing like the detailed work of reindustrializing the country and getting really good people in our military, getting really good people in industry, that if we put on a pedestal this idea of just starting a company, we're just gonna have a bunch of people running around with their heads cut off. And in some ways, I think we are entering that area where people are not focused on actual outcomes, right? And we've fetishized the process. And as long as you're starting a company, now you're a founder, you can just go do stuff, blah, blah, blah. The details don't matter. And so my worry is this is more of a symptom, which is I don't think everyone should be starting a company. I think we need really good people inside of companies that exist. And a lot of innovation, a lot of great innovation has come from within companies. And so a lot of great innovation has come from within the government too, right? And from all these places. And so we need good people doing stuff across the board. And so I don't want to put starting a company on a pedestal. And so my worry
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And the truth of this is that like most people do need a little bit more training coming out of college, right? Like most people are not ready.
Totally okay. Some of our greatest
It's okay.
Like,
I needed it, and I'm not a great founder. You're a founder. You probably needed a little bit of it. We all like most people,
and
like,
I
aside
think
from the
the
top
data
20.
actually shows the fans will have to get off us in the comments that the best founder, right? We take the anecdotes of the Zuckerbergs, et cetera, who dropped out, Bill Gates, whatever, but actually the data shows I think older founders actually typically perform better when they're in their 30s. Yeah. And so I don't know that we should be encouraging this, but I think it's symptomatic, right? It's symptomatic of what's going on in venture writ large, like you talked about with AUM. It's symptomatic with like our culture on Twitter and stuff, which is pushing people into the, you can just do stuff instead of should I be doing it? What should I be doing instead of just do stuff?
The social status of founders is the biggest risk to this problem. This right now, I think you're going to see a whole. They've made. Here's my final take on this. They've just made their job so much harder, like probably 10x harder, because now, Ben, people like us, you apply to BCG, Bain, McKinsey, and Y Combinator early decision, right? It's like, why not? It's a no. You talk about the zero cost veto. This is a zero cost application. You get in, you don't have to give anything up. There's no conviction behind that decision, right? Oh, I'm going to do Goldman Sachs, Citibank, JP Morgan, and Y Combinator early decision. I'm going to go Google, Facebook, Apple, and Y Combinator early decision. That's a crazy world to be in, that there's indifference between those choices now.
And I do think actually, now that I think about it, it does have a cost on the system, right? Because if we put this on a pedestal, it will suck up capital, right? Because your Y Combinator early decision people are going to suck up capital coming out of Y Combinator that otherwise could have gone to the very unsexy 30-year-old founder who's actually been in the industry for 10 years, been really carefully plotting and thinking about how to disrupt that industry. And there is a lot of capital out there, so I'm sure great founders will always find good capital, but it has me worried that will we be allocating capital in the right areas as like an ecosystem?
We're the salty old guys who were upset it wasn't around when we were in school. But I'm changing my take. I don't like it. Why Combinator? Get back to your roots. Stay true to who you are. High conviction bets only. All right, let's close that one out, Ben. Speaking of high conviction bets, there was a new Harvard Business Review case study out this week. And I'll be honest, I don't know what people think of what we do when we're not on live stream or on camera here, Ben, but I'm not a huge reader of the Harvard Business. I don't sit leafing through the pages over my cup of steaming hot cocoa in the I don't know. I don't drink coffee. I don't really drink tea. Maybe cocoa in the winter. I'm not sitting there leafing through the pages, but one did catch my eye this week. It's a case study on how to automate in manufacturing. This is one of the great topics here on the Steam Zone, Ben. So I'm going to give you a little flavor of what was in here, and then I want to hear your thoughts because, surprise, Ben, another example of where automation in manufacturing, a lot of talk, a lot of hype, not so much action. I think our president once said, all talk, no action, automation. That's what you got there. So in the United States, only 12% of factories today have any robots in them. Okay, 12%. Any robot, not all robot, any robot. Just 6% of all American factories have automated at any kind of scale. Robot density in the United States, meaning, okay, how many robots do we have per worker? It currently stands at 295 units per 10,000 workers. Compare that to Japan, that's at 419, Germany at 429, China at 470. And who do you think leads the pack, Ben?
China?
South Korea. South
Wow.
Korea at 1,012 robots per 10,000 worker. About 10% is actually robots in South Korea. That's interesting. So the thing that stuck out to me from this case study was this quote from a CEO of one of these manufacturing companies, which is that actually our great gap here is it's not even manufacturing of robots. It's not manufacturing of software to run on the robots. It's that taking over human tasks, in other words, automation, requires an incredible amount of human expertise. The one line is that there is nothing more manual than automation. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think this ties into a lot of themes we're talking about, which is probably at some level you can't vibe code your way to automation, right? And I think it hits on some other themes, right? Which is there's nothing good or bad, like what Bradley Tusk is talking about, is maybe automation will create more jobs, right? For the smart companies that do it well, right? And so we're out here and a reasonable worry, and I'm not saying it's not a reasonable worry, totally. I'm worried AI is coming for me. But maybe automation, there is some job growth with it too, right? And then for really smart companies, maybe small manufacturers will beat the giants, right? When we think about startups getting in the game, they just have less bureaucratic integration nightmares, right? When it comes to building automations, and they can be automation first in a way. But I think the truth is, and it ties to what we just talked about in Y Combinator, which is it's going to be tough to be an automation expert when you haven't run a factory, when you haven't built there. So we're going to need to send really smart people to factories to see how it's done now, understand these manual processes, and then start building again it, right? But if we are just doing this with the way we did B2B productivity tools and SaaS, I don't know we're going to get there where we need to get. And so if you haven't gotten a robot to load one part into another ever, I don't know if you should be talking about how you're going to be an automation expert and AI transformation of your business. So I think this is great. I think this is it's really in some ways heartwarming to read because it confirms my biases, which is there's nothing good or bad. Things are hard. The details matter. But no, I'm excited for the future where we send people to factories, send our best and brightest to factories instead of to consulting firms. And then they come up with really great ways after they become experts into how to make it better.
I think we're circling on a theme for this week, Ben, which is that there's training still matters. Okay, learning still matters. Development still matters. You don't come out of the womb knowing how to become a great entrepreneur. You don't come out of the womb knowing how to move into the future. Hey, YC's underscoring this bias of their program. These guys are saying the same thing. This stuff takes time. The way to become an expert at something, I don't know if it's Gladwell's 10,000 hours, but you got to do it. You got to do a lot of it. You got to really immerse yourself in it. So finding high conviction bets of areas of interest, problems you deeply care about, you wake up thinking about in the morning, you spend all day working on them, and you want to do it again tomorrow, that's where you're going to drive expertise. This article, I hope, is received in the way that I believe it's meant to be intended, which is it's the same as these AI adoption studies. There was another one from MIT last week. 93% of AI adoption, Gen AI has brought no value. Folks, we're in the first inning. We are in the top of the first. We're in the first quarter of the game. We're at the first move on the chessboard. Like, use whatever analogy you need to get it through your brain that just because we don't have instant gratification, the adoption of new technology doesn't mean the technology is bunk. It means we're just getting started. So if you want to stick your head in the sand and say, my AI dev tool didn't fully vibe code my entire website with one click the first time I did it, wake the fuck up, people. That didn't exist 6 months ago. You couldn't do any of that. The 0 to 1 process is hard. We're making everything happens slowly, and then it happens all at once. Keep an eye on autonomous vehicles, right? Slow. When the dam breaks, they're going to be everywhere. Same thing with drones. This is the 20-year overnight success in commercial drones. Slow, when the dam breaks, these things in our lifetime will be buzzing outside the window. The people who are going to see returns, both financially and on productivity, are the people who stay in the fight and who commit to learning this stuff and have enough conviction to see it through. So instant gratification culture, not for tech adoption, not for transformation. This is maybe, I don't know, Ben, this is maybe one of the only things I took away from I shouldn't say that. Stay in the fight. That's the message. Stay in the fight. All right, let's close that one out. Next up, speaking of bettering yourself, are you reading anything good right now, Ben? Or are you ready for a good book?
Everyone can see some of my bookshelf here. Hidden bonus, I will Venmo you if you can see the joke I've come up with on my bookshelf. So we'll get the internet sleuths digging into that. But that's a deep cut for real Steam Zone fans.
While you're squinting at Ben's bookshelf, we're going to bring in the author of a new book that I think should be top of the list, Mr. Wesley Sparks. All right, Wesley, welcome to the Steam Zone. Congratulations. You are a published author, sir. That's got to feel good.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Big fan of what you guys do. And it was an exciting past couple of weeks between launching a book and then AFA this week.
Yeah, busy weeks indeed. All right, let's get into the book. Tell us what it is and why you did it.
Sure. So it was definitely my first time writing a book. And so that's why it took me about 2 years, because I was trying to learn how to write a book while writing a book. And it's not the best way to do it for sure. But working in Army acquisition while I was still a Greek suitor, and then being in the defense industry for a while, I've got a shelf full of books about adjacent and around the industry and the topics. There's some great history like Freedom's Forge, quote and talk about. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum of how-to guides, like BD 360 as a how-to, and there's kind of the Duff Connors that are like how to win government contracts in 30 days or less kind of thing. And so, I was trying to straddle that and cover the range of what is this industry? Why is it the way it is? A lot of people have opinions right now. Everyone has their hot take on what's wrong in acquisition and what needs to be fixed. And so just trying to study a little bit that topic myself and then offer a little bit of a insiders or really an introduction guide to folks.
It's pretty neat. At what point what other things did you consider other than a book? Were there other channels? Did you consider making a movie, like starting a podcast, like anybody? What were the other options that you had?
First off, the best movie about the defense industry already exists. It's called Pentagon Wars. And so most people have watched that one. I'm a big consumer of the podcast. I listen to a lot of stuff that you're on and there's some great podcasts popping up about the industry and about dual use technologies and things like that. So I follow a lot. Thought about that briefly about launching a podcast, but then it was, hey, just another voice out there, and just turned into kind of long form articles as I got angry and typed, and then was able to turn that into the idea, hey, maybe I can actually write a book.
It's pretty neat. Do you have a copy there with you? Hold
Sure
that up
do.
for
Yep.
us. Show it off, man. There it
Copy
is.
here. It's
Buying Power.
yep,
Love it.
available on Amazon, and worked with a publisher. Great, and it's really helped me craft it into one narrative.
What do you think what did you learn through the process of writing, either about the subject matter or about the writing process itself? What's something that stood out to you that you took away from it?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that there's nothing new under the sun. Reading like old stuff from like Jock Gansler, and there's acquisition analysis and reform in the 1960s and the 1970s. It's never been really done well, arguably, or there's been pockets of success. You look at back, there's letters from General Washington to his quartermasters saying, you're buying the wrong stuff. It's showing up late. It's broken. It's not working. So the idea that there was like this golden era where we did it perfectly, defense acquisition, and then we're just stepping off the path, I think that's incorrect. Like each generation, each era has a new technology to deal with. Now we're talking about drones and things like that, but there's been an upsetting technology in every era.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think that's kind of prescient. And it's honestly, it's refreshing because I was at a defense conference earlier today. It's a lot of this era of war is different. There's always a new technology, but fundamentally, like, the human capital is what fights and wins in wars. What do you think? Maybe give us like the thesis of the book. What is the message that you wanted to convey to folks that inspired you to write in the first place?
Sure. I think some of the big takeaway is the American approach and the current dynamic we have is unique in the way that we've got our biggest arms design and manufacturing companies are in the S&P 500. So that's not quite the same compared to a lot of other countries. And then the dynamic of what is GOCO and what is an inherent organic base or that a country maintains versus the idea now where some people say we're too privatized, some people say we're not. So I try to do a little bit of analysis of how it's happened in defense industry has grown up in other countries. There's a little bit of a comparison. Yeah, but I think my thesis is that buying power is difficult. It is business on hard mode, right? Where your customer gets to write the rules that you have to live by. And it's a constant like collision of policy, laws, regulations. You've got 535 stakeholders between Congress and Senate that can change your corporate outlook very quickly. I just saw it Tuesday afternoon, and that's a big dynamic that I don't think enough people outside the industry can fully appreciate yet. And throwing my statements out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so give us a sense of when you look out at the industry as it stands today, what's one thing that industry needs to understand, and one about government, and one thing that government needs to understand about industry that you think people get wrong?
Well, that's a tough one. That's a big question right there. One thing that is a challenge for the industry across the board right now, this new administration is definitely upsetting some apple carts, right? Changing a far rewrite, a lot of policy changes. That goes everything from the geopolitical dynamics all the way down to the budget and things like that. So this administration is definitely not a business as usual, just, hey, copy what you did last year and paste it this year. And that's a huge challenge for the industry to try to understand and how to adapt to. And on the government side, I think they're reacting to plenty of stuff, again, with trying to change the rules while the process is happening. From OTAs, CSOs, a lot of the new mechanisms are new. I've got my air quotes up here, but it's a hard process to get something from an idea on a whiteboard at a requirements writing house from the warfighter to a industrial scale capacity that's churning them out by the lot. That's a difficult undertaking, and I think people unfairly compare it internally or sometimes to like the automotive industry. Say, hey, Ford can make this many cars a month. Why can't the DoD churn out that many cruise missiles a month? And I think that's a drastic oversimplification. And there's not nearly as many parallels as someone outside the industry would think.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's just packed with insight. I'm looking forward to reading it. Wesley, plug it. Where can folks go to pick up a copy?
Sure. Yeah. So Buying Power, the Business of Defense in America. You can get it on Amazon right now. Soon it will be on Kindle as an ebook. And then we'll see about making an audiobook at some point. That would be really fun to do, but that hasn't been booked yet. But
Nice. Hey, congrats again, man. I know that's a labor of love and that's a hard thing to do, to stick with it. Appreciate you supporting the industry with your knowledge and insight. And thanks for stopping by the Steam Zone.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to game day.
All right. So that was fun with Wesley. Ben, I'm getting you a copy. We're gonna book club that thing in the Steam
Does
Zone next
Audible
week.
count these days as reading? That's something we need to leave up for a poll for the fans. When I say I'm reading a book and I'm listening to it on Audible, does that count?
That's a podcast, man. That sounds like a podcast.
So is everything a podcast now?
I don't know. People keep telling me all I do is podcasts. Like I
Can
don't
you
think
automate
I
a
think I have
podcast?
one.
Can
I have
I
one
early
podcast.
decision apply to YC with a podcast?
You know what?
Citizens
Maybe we
apply
should
early
start that.
decision to Y Combinator. Vote in the comments.
Podcast you, baby. Podcast University. All right, Ben. I think that brings us to your favorite time of week. Let's steam it out. What do you got?
I got 2 steams this week. I don't know if that's allowed, but one.
He's double steaming.
One, let's just say, if you are inside and you don't have a medical condition and you are wearing sunglasses to be cool, I'm out. No more. But more importantly, I saw a lot of that tied into Climate Week, where people are trying to look cool wearing sunglasses inside. It's not that bright. Is anyone in the climate area who isn't into nuclear, I think needs to just leave, right? Because nuclear is clearly if not an answer, it is without doubt, when you think probabilistically, something we need to be spending significant time and energy when we think about how are we going to build our future to create a world where we have abundant energy. If you're not serious about nuclear, I don't think you're serious about any of these climate issues. So I want to see the people who just dismiss nuclear, just get out of here. You're a tourist in solving the problem and you're just doing it for the likes on Twitter. Please, this is like a technology we need to invest in. We need everyone on board. And if you use the environment as a way to stop nuclear, then you just don't care about the environment. I won't take you seriously anymore. I'm not saying nuclear is the complete answer, and maybe it turns out we find another technology out there that's better. Who knows? I can't predict the future. But there's just no way when you can look at a distribution of outcomes in the future and you say probabilistically that in a world where we have abundant energy, there's no way where nuclear isn't, if not a plurality, a majority of those outcomes. And so if you're serious about the environment, you better be serious about nuclear.
I think Ben just excommunicated a bunch of people from the climate movement, which I know nothing about. Hey, God bless, Godspeed, good luck. I hope it works. I like nuclear's cool, I think, as long as it works. All right. All right, here's what I got this week, Ben. I got to spend this week, a little bit of this week at a technical exercise with some folks in the military. And I gotta be honest, I walked away. My heart hurt for these United States of America. And here's why. There's a lot of people right now talking about certain technologies. I'm going to keep this vague. I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to keep it vague until a later date. But certain technologies, we got to get them in the hands of the warfighter. We got to get better at this. We got to get better at that. When you actually talk to the people doing the mission, they don't even have the freaking technology. They don't have it to play. Like my Steam this week is called Let Them Play. Let these guys get their hands on the thing that you're saying they need more of so they can learn how to freaking use it. We don't need to be going from 0 to 1 when the program office is unblocked buying stuff at some massive scale. So right now you do a little experimentation with a little group and eventually it goes to everybody. I'd like to see a little bit more momentum, a little bit more rolling progress of, okay, one group gets them, another group. We don't need to go from one to everything all at once, but let's get some more hands on this stuff so that we're not sitting here. I think we've been solving in some ways only part of the problem on things like, I don't know, unmanned aerial systems as a hypothetical example. Industry, we've been hearing about, we need to make more of this, blue list, this components, this back and forth, components from China, no components from China. How strict do we want to be on that? At the same time, the guys who we're going to be asking to use this stuff, they can't get their hands on the freaking things. So let them play. Let's figure out, these authorities exist, people. I'm going to put a post out shortly with a couple of ideas of how we can get folks' hands on this. But if you're a senior leader, you're out there, you're giving speeches at a conference, maybe skip the conference and go sit at your desk for an hour with a guy who's trying to do the thing that you're talking about. Figure out how to unfuck it. All right, figure out how to unblock it. Let's get that out in the world. Let's get adoption moving forward by getting good people the ability to play with new and exciting technologies. That's all I got.
It sounds like what you're saying is pay attention to the details. Stop going to the big headline events and actually pay attention to the
Mr. Detail Jacobson over here is at it again. All right, folks, that's all we got for you this week. Thanks for tuning into the Steam Zone. We'll see you next time.